So I'd like to introduce Rob Swiers.
That is still our legal name. The New Life Center started serving individuals in 1907, so we're 111 years old. And in that length of time, I'm the fourth director the organization has ever had. And so what that means is I did not sign a 30-year contract. No, I'm just kidding. It means that the ministry and helping others really gets in your blood. But seeing that picture brought me back because that is still our legal name, and certainly folks who've been around for a few years recognize the Fargo Union mission. I wish we still had that sign. That would be really cool. Anyway, I didn't come up here to talk about that, but that was very neat. So I want to talk just a little bit about the New Life Center and a challenge to you, an invitation to you, and hopefully get you to see the impact that you're making in the world around you. And you may not even realize it all the time. I'll talk just a little bit about who we are, who we serve, a little bit more about, I'm going to read a little bit of scripture here, and then end up with a couple stories. And so I'll try to keep it on task. But I will certainly be hanging around a little bit afterwards as well, so if you've got any questions for me, please feel free to stop and visit in the back. So the New Life Center is one of 5 shelters, and a lot of people think of us as a homeless shelter, but we certainly do more than that. In fact, we think of ourselves more as a rescue mission than a homeless shelter. Yes, we provide shelter. We provide shelter to those who need it, individuals who are homeless in our community. And I can guarantee on a day like this, I had to find a hat. Obviously, you need a hat. I've got my brother sitting up here who needs a hat as well. But I guarantee on a day like this, there are guys sleeping outside under the bridges downtown and other places around in our community. And you think about that and realize, those folks need some place to stay. They need to get out of the elements. And so a lot of folks think about us as a shelter, and that is what we do. We provide shelter for single males, 18 and over, and we've got 114 beds in our facility. Now, again, we are one of 5 organizations in the Fargo-Moorhead area that shelter individuals. Last year, our average, every night of the year, we averaged 105 per night. So right now, while it's still cold out and obviously going backwards here through the winter, we've been over full. All 114 beds full. We've got probably a dozen guys sleeping on the floor, and then another dozen that we send to another emergency shelter. It's a church over in North Moorhead that takes overflow. So during the summer, our numbers go down a little bit, which is great because it gives everybody a little breathing room, even the guys who stay with us. But in the winter, it is so packed. We also provide the basics of food. We just built a new kitchen, and I will invite you probably a number of times to come and see it or come and tour at any point. Last year we served let me back up. We served not only the folks who stay with us, but those from the community as well. And so we had served 224 meals per day, every day of the year last year. And you think your kitchen's busy. It is basically start in the morning, prep the meal, serve the meal, clean up the meal, sit down, get up, and do it over again. And we do that 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And so it is very busy. And then the basics of clothing. And I know and I recognize a number of you folks who have dropped off items over at our store. We have a thrift store that's located just across the street from the shelter in North Fargo. And any of the items that you don't need anymore that still are good and can be used by someone else, we'll gladly take them and then resell them. Or we give those items to those who stay with us, if it's clothing, or when they move out, we want to set them up with a bed, a dresser, a kitchen table, those types of things. And so those basics we want to provide for folks. And we do that, and this is where the rescue mission concept comes in, like our name, the Fargo Union Mission. We do that in an environment that is a Christ-centered environment. Now, we don't ever make guys come to devotions. We don't ever make them go to Bible study. But we have a chaplain and we have other staff who invite them. Just like when you have friends over to your house, or when you come to church, or when you go to an event. On a Sunday morning, it's very unlikely that someone would drive by Flame of Faith and say, you know what, I got nothing better to do, I'm going to go to church. Maybe, but more than likely, it's because they've been invited by you why they would show up. And so we want to invite the men who stay with us to come to those things too. And we're going to talk about value here a little bit as we roll along. And we invite them because that's how people maintain relationship, right? That's how you stay connected with family and friends and church, your congregation. You're invited to be part of this. And one of the biggest things that we want to focus on with those that we serve, whether they stay with us or if they come for a meal, is to help them understand that they have value. They have value not because of who they are, what they have, bank account, no bank account, retirement account. None of those things give a person value. We have value because God gives us value. And I loved your litany this morning. A number of times it talked about, and I underlined our relationships with each other, and then over and over it talked about God remains faithful. He doesn't give up on us. He doesn't give up on us. He doesn't give up on us. And so often the guys that we serve feel like everyone has given up on them. Everyone. And whether someone has verbally said that, or whether I've done it when I pull up to a parking ramp and someone is holding a sign, and I look the other way. And I'm not trying to guilt anyone because that's my first reaction. And what that does to a person over time is it says, I don't have even enough value for someone to look at me. But that's not true. That's not true. We think about, take a $20 bill, and when it first comes out of the mint, it's crisp and it's nice and fresh. And if we were to take that $20 bill and crumple it up, and I shouldn't move, and crumple it up, and Jansen's over here saying, quit moving around. I promise I'll stay right here. Crumple it up and stomp on the ground and maybe even tear it in half. It still has $20 worth of value. But the guys that we serve feel like because life has tore them up and beat them up, that they don't have that value. And I'm going to read just a little bit of scripture here. And I think you are familiar with this. It ties right into what we're talking about. It's found in the book of Luke, chapter 10, and it's verses 30 through 34. It's a story of the Good Samaritan. Very familiar piece of scripture. And Jesus says, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine. Then he put him on his donkey and took him to an inn to take care of him. And that's where the individuals sometimes show up. That's how they show up at the New Life Center. Life has kind of beat them up, and they feel like they've been cast aside. But my encouragement to you is, by coming to church and participating and hearing the different places, and I applaud the different things that you are involved in as a church, you are those good Samaritans that are not just saying, you know what, don't worry about folks. You're taking the time to hear and to advocate and then to say, you know what, these people are important. And that is really a big deal. At the shelter, we have two different programs. One is a short-term program that's called our Harbor program. And Harbor basically is where someone can stay for 30 days. Now, like I said, there are folks outside in this weather. And one of the things, and you know, my eyes have been so opened up to our community. We have a wonderful community. I mean, this is a great place to live and to grow up and to raise a family. But you know, if you're on the street and you don't have a place to stay, it can also be a very dangerous place. And believe it or not, there are lots of guys who get beat up, get robbed, and life just treats them hard. And so they come to us, and those first 30 days with us really are designed to help in the basics of emergency shelter, but the basics of providing some security. You know, Joe, you don't have to be looking over your shoulder all the time. No one's going to steal your boots. This is a safe place. You will be okay. We're going to feed you. We're going to help you. We're going to take care of you. And that's our Harbor program. And then we say to them, after they meet with a case manager, do you want to continue on this road? Do you want to get back on your feet? Do you want to work on recovery? I'm not talking about substance abuse. I'm just talking about recovery from being beat up by life. And that's what our Passport program is for. And that's the long-term program where they learn the values that they do have value. And we want to help them discover hope. We teach them how to manage a budget, how to, a nutritious meal, believe it or not, isn't a burrito and a cup of coffee from Holiday, right? Sometimes it hits the spot, but it's not necessarily a nutritious meal. And then we want to help them also with landlord relations. We don't want them to stay at the shelter. We want them to get into their own place. But if they don't know how to manage those relationships, they probably won't be able to stay there. And so that's where that Good Samaritan piece comes in, where you folks, when you are participating in church and hearing about what we do, you are participating in caring for those individuals. On the table in back is a little slip called, and it's a flyer called Meal at the Mission. And I want to invite every single one of you. If I could look at every one of you, but that'd take too much time. So I'll just, please consider grabbing one of these. The third Thursday of every month, we have a meal, it's from 11 to 12, and then I talk a little bit, and then we take a tour of the shelter. And I can guarantee, if I can get you to walk through the shelter, it will change your perception of the folks who are here in Fargo. Because I tell you what, my wife says I keep her up at night. I'm a loud snorer, apparently. I don't notice it. But she says I keep her up at night. Our large dormitory has 60 beds in it. Can you imagine sleeping or trying to sleep in a room with 60 other people? It would be like this room crammed full of people. And these guys are trying to stay sober. They are trying to get back on their feet. They're trying to find a job. They're trying to fill out Social Security paperwork. No wonder they have such a hard time. And so come and take a tour. I'd love to show you around. But I want to end with, I have folks ask me, Rob, so at 5 o'clock you go home and punch out and go home and go play golf or go hunting, and you don't ever think about work after you go home, right? No, it's not true. The challenge with being at the mission is it is ministry. And as Pastor Sara or any of you who have family members that you're concerned about at different times or different things in your jobs, you just don't compartmentalize and clock out and stop thinking about those things. And I do this job to get rich. No, that's not true. Just see if you're listening, because that's absolutely not true. I do this job because of, I'm going to tell you about two gentlemen, and one of them his name is Paul Larson. Many of you recognize what I'm holding in my hand, not Paul necessarily, but this is something that was handed out the program at his funeral. Paul was 30 years old when he passed away. He struggled tremendously with depression and alcohol. And his mother said, "Rob, please don't let Paul have died in vain. Tell his story." And Paul is one of the reasons that I'm at the New Life Center. We have a building full of folks who struggle in one way or another. And I would dare to say, in a group like this, there are folks who struggle. You know what? It's all of us at some point. But the men at the mission, like Paul, they're going through a tough time. You haven't won the lottery if you end up at a shelter. And I say you guys have done because I'm healthy, and you can just see it in his eyes. I mean, he's a healthy guy. And so I encourage you to be that good Samaritan who, in whatever your mission field is, and obviously I'd love to invite you over to the New Life Center and have you participate there. Flame of Faith, this is part of your mission field. Where you work is part of your mission field. Your family is part of your mission field. Those you have coffee with on Saturday morning down at I would say the Senex station, because I grew up in a little town. There's got to be a Senex station around here too, I'm thinking. But those are your mission fields. Kids, when you're in school, you've got an opportunity to come alongside of someone else who's hurting and say, you know what? You have value, and I'm going to take the time to stop and visit with you. So, again, I invite you to grab one of these. Love to have you over, and if you can't make that time, I know it's a little inconvenient, but I'm thankful it's inconvenient because we're in the middle of a construction project to remodel the whole building. Give me a call. I'd love to show you around. And just thank you to you as a church for what you do for those in our community who are hurting. You do make a difference, and I'm very thankful for that.